Welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Today we'll be doing some drawing with graphite. So get out your pencils, your cotton swab, kneaded eraser, anything that you think you need to draw with, and let's draw together. Remember, art makes life better. So once you get your simple shapes established, then you can start doing just some very light blending with that number 2 pencil. Again, everything that you're doing with this number 2 pencil, if you're drawing with the side of your pencil, can be erased, easily erased. And look how fast this goes. This is much faster than trying to do it like this. And your hand is up off the page. You're not smearing things. Like I say, I know it feels weird, but in the end, it will be much faster, much better. I'm going to go ahead and shade the entire body using the side of my pencil here. And I haven't erased anything yet. You need that graphite on there anyway, so why erase it if you're going to put it back anyway? So his whole body is fairly dark. It's not as dark as we're going to get it, but you can go ahead and shade that entire surface in with the side of your pencil. You're going to need that graphite. The other thing is I don't know if you've ever shaded anything and it's kind of streaky. This way, when you're shading like this, you can go every which way, and you can go even in circles if you want. And when we start to blend it, it will all be nice and soft and smooth, and we won't worry about the streakiness. And the last thing you do, once you got everything kind of the way you want it, the last thing you're going to do is take that kneaded eraser and just get rid of things that you think, may not need that. Or, like, for example, this little shape here in the front, I've got it too big. And so what I'm going to do is just take my kneaded eraser and just pull out some of that. Any of those feathers that are on the top, and I think, I want to round that out, I'm just going to pull it out with my kneaded eraser. And you might need to pinch your kneaded eraser a little bit because it absorbs it, and you'll see the graphite come off on your kneaded eraser. So you can just kind of pinch it. I'm just going to use my kneaded eraser to get those nice soft edges. And if there's something that's lost, like his head is so light, you may want to just kind of leave it out. Maybe break some of those edges just a little bit so it's soft and light. This back edge, I'm going to use my kneaded eraser to get that back edge. Any sketchy lines that you think, I really don't like those in there, you can get rid of them. Even that top part of his beak, so light, you can go through and just pull that out a little bit, get rid of some of that. Whatever you feel like you need. So now we have this very light ghost image. Everything here can still be erased. And it isn't until we really darken things up that things start to pop a little bit. Start getting that contrast. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my 6B pencil. This is your softer pencil, and so whatever you draw with this is going to be darker. Plus, I'm now going to switch over to this because I want to do some very dark areas. So right around his eyes, pretty dark. I'm just going to go in, I'm going to switch over to this, and I'm going to, because this is your detail mode, I'm going to just throw in some detail. And his eye is one of those dominant areas So I'm just going to put in some very dark area around his eye. Even his eyebrow gets kind of dark. There's a little dark ring around the eye. His pupil, very strong. Almost touches the top, not quite. And then just drawing those shapes. There's a little triangle in the back side of his eye there. Try to make that eye nice and round. And I'm going to use my feathered lines. I'm just going to go through and just tug a little bit of these lines around. Just little tiny lines, just where it's a little darker. This is called a feathered line, where you drop your pencil in, you give it a little flip, and you get this nice soft edge. Somewhere, about right in there, is a little football shape for a nostril. His beak is a little darker underneath, so I'm going to do his beak, the little dark part. But notice I haven't drawn a line around anything. You want to avoid drawing those lines around things. I know that that's kind of what you've been doing your whole life, but we're going to try and change that. You'll draw faster, you'll draw nicer, lighter, softer, more realistic. You'll like your edges better. And a lot of this we're going to get with our cotton swab. So just anything that feels a little bit on the darker side, go ahead and throw those in. But don't draw a line around the edge. In fact, all these little feathers that are out in there, because they're so light, so soft, we're going to get those with our cotton swab. All these little feathers, all that stuff that's in there, we're going to do with our cotton swab. And some of these little edges we're going to do with our kneaded eraser. The edge of his mouth is right under his eye. So if you go straight down under his eye, that's about where the edge of his mouth is. And you can just do this little V shape, little sideways V shape. The head is our emphasis area. That is the most important place. That's what people are going to be looking at. So we want to make sure that that head is just right. And again, the further away you get from your emphasis, the more sketchy, the more relaxed you can be. Okay, so here goes my cotton swab. I'm just going to pick up some of that dark stuff that's around his eye. I'm just going to pull some of that out, soften those edges. Look how that just softens those edges. I'm going to try to avoid getting it inside his eye, but if I do, that's okay. I can pull some of this out towards his beak. I can even bring some of that up into those feathers, just a little bit. Now I'm just going to use my cotton swab to just pull some things around. If you feel like it's really light, don't touch it. You can always come back in later and add more to it. Now I'm going to just pull up some of this gray that's around that beak. And I know that beak looks really soft and fuzzy, and we're just going to hit that with our kneaded eraser, and that'll just tighten up that edge. Here's some of those feathers underneath. I'm just going to pull those down, soften them up. And once you start putting some graphite on that cotton swab, you can draw with it. So I can come over and I can now use that cotton swab to draw some of those very soft feathers. I'm going over his head just a little bit and just kind of bringing some of those little edges out, just softening up some of this so it looks kind of soft and fuzzy. You don't want a hard line there, though. And if you need a little more graphite, you can pick it up from somewhere else. I'm going to just come down here and I'm going to pick up some of this from down here, and I'm going to move it up into here. And if your cotton swab kind of gets depleted of its graphite, you can either pick it up from somewhere else, or you can just take your pencil and go back into it, maybe pick up some other dark areas. So you can just pick up just a few little dark areas with the side of your pencil. So I can go in, and now I can just grab some of that graphite and I can move it over. Look how fast those feathers are. Wait till we get to the body. And technically, that's about it. There's really not a whole lot more you can do. You just kind of clean it up, clean everything else up with that kneaded eraser. So those edges, his beak especially, where it's nice and sharp right there on the end, I'm going to clean that up. Now we've got a nice sharp beak. Some of those little feathers on the end, if you think, well, those are a little dark or a little too much line or something, you take that kneaded eraser and just pick up some of those things, just clean them up a little bit. When I usually draw, I'll usually start out some dark areas, then I'll blend a little bit. Invariably, I come back into it and go, oh, it's not dark enough. You know, so I have to come back in and add some more. Just a little bit here and there. And if you're using the side of your pencil, it'll make it softer, easier to blend. And even some of those feathers, if they're a little darker, just put in a little shape, and then you can take your cotton swab and you can go into it and just blend it a little bit. Any of that we just threw in there, we can blend. Now, that head is just about done. So you can clean up anything. You can, a little bit of that eraser. And we can always come back into it. So now what I want to do is the body. And those little feathers that are in there, all you got to do is leave them out, because we'll blend them here in a little bit. So if you think about feathers, I'm just going to use the side of my pencil. I'm going to do these little kind of U shapes, and then I'm just going to leave out little areas in between. So I'm just going to do little U shapes like that and leave out little areas, leave out little things in between. And you don't have to be exact. You know, not every bird's going to have an exact pattern for those. But they're kind of almost fish scale kinds of things. So now I'm just doing those edges with the side of my pencil. I'll come back in and blend all that. But that's our technique. We'll get those feathers nice and soft. And if there's lighter areas, you can just touch them with your kneaded eraser. This can go fairly quick too. So I'm just using my pencil. And by the way, you're sharpening your pencil as you go. So if you needed to go back in, do some tight details somewhere, you got a nice sharp pencil now. You don't even have to do it everywhere. If you look at it and you think, oh, I cannot see any feathers over there, don't draw them. Just shade it in. And you can be kind of spotty. It doesn't have to even connect to anything. I don't know if you've ever looked at feathers. They're kind of like brick or fish scale, where they're kind of offset. You put two and then one in the middle, two and then one in the middle, but they're not that even. And so there's a whole lot you can do with just the side of your pencil here to make it look like feathers. That head, that's the most important thing. Once you get that done, everything else is easy, falls into place. And remember, we're not drawing lines around things. Those edges will take care of themselves. So this is his back. These are his wings folded up, and his head is turned so it's more profile. So yeah, this is his back right here. And you can see where his wings, this wing kind of folds up this way, and you can sort of see the other wing right along that edge. It's hard to see his feet. In fact, his feet are kind of covered up by this little branch that's over there. It's easy to see why the bald eagle was chosen as our national identity, our national bird. They're so majestic and so intense. So again, I'm not really trying to follow anything. I'm just using their patterns as a inspiration, kind of as a guide. You know, Ben Franklin suggested we do a turkey for our national bird. Yeah, because everybody's like, "Oh, come on, Ben, that's too practical." So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cotton swab. I'm going to blend this, but I'm going to be a little choosy about where I blend. There are areas that I want to blend a little bit more, and areas that maybe I blend a little less. And so you can add a little pressure to your cotton swab, or you can keep it very light and soft. And you're going to get a lot of graphite coming off on that cotton swab. So if you needed to go back up into something like down in here where it's a little darker, I can do that with my cotton swab now that I've got more graphite on there. And I'll show you this here. Let me get some graphite out on this cotton swab, and then I'll show you what you can do with the limbs out there. So these limbs that are coming off there, if you wanted to do some limbs, just take your cotton swab and just do those little limbs kind of coming off. And they'll be soft and fuzzy, and you'll have some dark areas and some light areas. And then all of a sudden you've got limbs. And you really hardly did anything for those limbs. Isn't that cool? You can even have little bits and pieces just kind of hanging off there, not even attached to anything, and everybody looks at it and goes, oh, it's a limb, it's a light limb. So that's kind of fun. So all that graphite that we laid on, and we really did very little erasing. And it's okay if it's not exactly perfect. What is perfection anyway? It's a standard that somebody's created, and it's probably not perfect itself. But you can take this as far as you want it to go. Some people like that real fresh kind of feel to it. Other people want to go a little more photographic. That's totally up to you. But I just wanted to show you this technique. It's a very fast, and it's kind of fun. It's kind of relaxing. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my kneaded eraser, and I'm just kind of looking and saying, okay, where are some little light areas? Not every area in there is light. So I just want to pull out just a couple little light areas. So I'm going to pinch my kneaded eraser down to that little kind of little shape, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to touch it. Touch, 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 touch. And some of those little lighter areas. And of course, you're going to have to pinch it down. You touch it about 4 or 5 times, and then you have to pinch it again. But you can come in and just touch some of those little lighter areas. You can pick up some of those little feathery kind of tones that you can get. You can use your kneaded eraser to clean up things like on your branches. If you think, oh, that's too thick and I want it a little thinner, you can just little kneaded eraser there, touch it up. Here's some more branches coming up this way. The branch over there. You don't even have to follow what's there. You know, as long as you put a little bit of that in the background, that texture is kind of nice. Have that coming up off the eagle. One thing about backgrounds, you don't want your backgrounds to be tight. You don't want a lot of detail there because it takes away the interest from your subject matter, which in this case is the eagle. And so if you need that back in there to just tell your audience, your viewers, he's in a tree, that's all you need. When you're doing like tree bark too, it's just shapes of dark and light. And so I just kind of go through and scribble in where I see some darkness. And you can leave little areas out. And that just kind of gives it some texture. Don't be too random. Look at your tree, your scrap, your reference, and try to follow it somewhat. Doesn't have to be exact. The cotton swab is going to make it light and soft. And you want your edges to stay light and soft. You don't want a hard edge there because your bird is soft. Those feathers are soft. Now I can go through. I like that texture that I'm getting with the cotton swab in the back. I'm just going back over some of that. You can leave little areas out, and voila, you've got your feathers there. My cotton swab is loaded with graphite. There's a lot that I can draw with this. And so you may not want to throw your cotton swab away. You may want to keep it, because next time that cotton swab's going to already have graphite on it. It's already loaded. So I stick them in my little Altoids box, and it's just going to be there next time for me. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser on the branch as well. I do like some of that grain that's in there, so I'm going to try to keep that going. And you can also use that cotton swab to get some texture as well. You can go back and forth, or you can go in little swirls or up and down. And don't be afraid to leave things out. If you think, well, that's really light, just leave it out. Or if you think, oh, I should have left that out, take your kneaded eraser and go back in and just touch it. Well, we've got a few minutes left is all. And if the time went by quickly for you, it meant that you're in your right brain. Your right brain has no time concept, so you lose track of time. And time flies when you're having fun. So hopefully you had a little bit of fun. Hopefully you learned something. And hopefully art is going to make your life a little bit better. So art makes life better. And your signature should be part of the composition. In other words, you want to look at it and say, okay, where can I put that signature that makes it interesting? So one place you could put it is right up here next to his back, or you could put it right in that little spot over there. That's a good spot for it. Or right up next to him right there. So I'm going to just put mine right there. Last thing is just clean it up with your kneaded eraser. Any smudges, anything that you feel like got to keep it clean. Cleanliness is a very difficult thing to do, but very important. And I hope you have a lovely day.